The first game of the day on Sunday will be between Florida, the 1 seed in the West, and UConn, two-time defending national champs, 8 seed. Took down Oklahoma in a tight one tonight. It felt like UConn was maybe going to pull away a bunch of different times, and then Oklahoma seemed to always have an answer. Um, Ended up pulling it out though, and Florida, they jumped out fast. I mean, they were up 30 in the snap of a finger. Um, Ended up kind of coasting after that, I would say. They didn't really need to push it too hard because Norfolk State was no daunting opponent. But it'll be a little bit different on Sunday. But obviously playing UConn, the pedigree alone, the coaching staff, but I still don't really see Florida having much trouble here. Maybe UConn, they should make them work a little bit more, of course, but I still think just like the size, Florida, 6th in the country in offensive rebound rate. Despite UConn being like decent, they're 67th in the country in defensive rebound rate. That's not in the SEC. I think that Florida's size, their ability to just get on the glass, is going to be way too much. Aside from a lot of other things, I think the athleticism of the guards for Florida is going to be a problem. The physicality of like Elijah Martin is going to be a problem. Walter Clayton. I worry about UConn's perimeter defense here. I worry about their ability to control the glass or at least like neutralize the glass a little bit. I really think that this is just Florida moving on to the Sweet 16, and there's really not much more to it.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I see it. Like you said, Florida's athleticism on the perimeter is definitely their biggest edge in this game. We've seen UConn really struggle, especially that guard group struggle when they have to play up against a quicker, longer, rangier, more athletic guard group. Like there are some guys on that team, in particular, like an Aiden Mahaney, that become unplayable against these kind of teams. Like he could play tonight against Oklahoma because they're not really all that daunting. They're smaller. He kind of fits in size wise there. And there's just, a lot of these UConn guards are going to feel pretty uncomfortable. Like even Diarra, like I don't really trust him with the ball in his hands all that much. He's a good distributor, but doesn't really handle the ball that well. And when Florida wants to pick you up 94 feet, I think that becomes a problem for this UConn offense. I mean, UConn has a few things working for them in this game to keep the game tight at least. The pace is the first part, like 340th in adjusted tempo, and they do really emphasize keeping teams out of transition. They're in the 20th percentile in transition opportunities allowed, and they defend it pretty well. They're in the 74th percentile on points per possession in transition, and Florida is one of the best transition offenses in the country. They're 88th percentile in frequency and 96th percentile in points per possession, so they could at least slow that down. The problem is UConn can't really defend in the half court either, and Florida's offense gets a tad worse in the half court, but still really, really good because they can get all over the offensive glass against pretty much anyone. I know you said like UConn is good on the glass, but I do think Florida definitely has the edge there. So I do like how UConn can match up in the front court a little bit, but Florida's always going to have the edge in that area. So overall, I think, yeah, probably just a little bit of a talent gap and athleticism gap here in this game. And I'll just back the better team to continue to roll. I don't think it's it's not going to be a mauling. I don't think it's going to be a 20, 25 point win for Florida. I think UConn could potentially scare them early in this game, but that Florida run is inevitable typically in every single game. So I think Florida can win this game. I think they win by 10 to 12 is what I'll say.
Yeah, I see it that way. I think probably in that like 10 to 15 range is pretty fair. The spread's sitting at what, 8.5. Torvik projects at 9.5. I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's that UConn tax that
It is. It
every
really
line
is.
comes
I
out
mean,
at. It's
we
crazy.
like we'll talk about it in a second when we get to the Ole Miss game, but the UNC tax is real too. I mean, you see it.
Was
Um,
real.
yeah. Um, I think like you said though, UConn's half court defense is eh. They're not going to really turn Florida over at all. Florida takes care of the ball very well. They're 38th in the country in turnover rate, and UConn's in the bottom, 60, I guess, in defensive turnover rate, 282nd defensive turnover rate. They're going to be pretty comfortable. And while Florida is kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of offensive free throw rate, um, I think their ability to get on the glass here is, like I said, going to be a problem. And UConn is a bunch of hacks, really. I mean, like Taurus Reed seems to be in foul trouble a lot. Samson Johnson in foul trouble a lot. They're 334th in the country in defensive free throw rate. They're going to give up some free throws here in this game, I think. Especially where Florida is going to be active on the glass. I think that's pretty conducive to Florida living at the foul line. It's just a matter of, making those free throws, which, I think Florida will be fine there.
Yeah, I mean, the front court of UConn they can foul themselves out in 15 minutes or less.
I mean, we saw it against
Johnson.
Creighton. I mean, that game at Creighton, they had to play small because both those guys had 4 fouls with 16 minutes left in the second half.
That turned into a blessing for them, honestly. That game, Caravan spacing the floor was huge. But yeah, overall, I think they're going to need those guys. You can't play small ball against Florida because those bigs of Florida are way too mobile. So they're just kind of matchup proof at this point. It's just at this point, a team that's going to beat them would be, I mean, we might be talking about it next round. Potentially Maryland, I think, is a pretty good matchup, I guess. I think Florida's the better team, it's just the upper echelon teams in the country. Those are the teams that have the chance of beating them. UConn's not one of those teams this year. So, yeah, I'm going to say, yeah, Florida can win this game pretty comfortably. Wouldn't be surprised because UConn's a great half-court offense, and Florida doesn't turn you over at a super high rate. It's a more conservative defense. They play a lot of drop coverage. They mix their ball screen coverages a little bit, which I wouldn't be surprised if they played at the level or blitzed a little bit more just to make Diarra feel uncomfortable also. So, yeah, obviously, yeah, I think Florida's going to handle business here.
Yeah, definitely. So, should see Florida handle business pretty comfortably. We're expecting a 10 to 15 point win probably, but look for them to move on to the second round to face the winner, or the Sweet 16, I should say, to face the winner of Maryland and Colorado State.